It's still starting, it's still busy. There it is.
Okay, so I'm just going to do the introduction for Family Constellations. So, and I'm being videoed, so hello everybody. So we've got a small audience here, and obviously an international audience via the camera, which is really always rather nice. So a family constellation originated in Germany, okay, by a guy called Bert Hellinger, who came out in the 50s to South Africa. He wanted to be a missionary, and he thought he would come and bring the church to South Africa. And what happened was that he ended up working with a group of African traditional healers in somewhere in Mpumalanga, you know, with the Zulus, and learning their tradition for about 15 years. And so as he did that, he gave up the church, gave up the missionary thing, and started to understand what is the technology that is being used with these healers. And so one of the things that came out was this idea of working intergenerationally. So you don't only work with where you're at, because where you're at, you've inherited stuff from the people that come before you. Okay, you've inherited propensities, behaviors, memories, even traumas. So, and you came for an emotional intelligence workshop, and so this is kind of learning about emotions. But sometimes your emotions are in a field that comes from family genetics. So what we do is that we'll listen to your story, and we've got somebody who will be doing their own story here, and then we've got a couple of non-local stories. In other words, we've got clients who aren't even here, they're overseas. So what happens is that each of you will be representatives of the story, and you get chosen to play an aspect of somebody's story. Okay? And if you're an aspect of their story, all you have to do is feel what's coming up for you in that role. Okay, you just get enrolled in that person's, the part that you're playing in their life, and then you just feel what's coming up, and you just report that. Okay, so I'll just quickly go a little bit over some of the science. I know there were some questions about what is the science of this. So basically, the Family Constellations community calls it the knowing field. Okay, so that we all live in the sea of consciousness, that all around us is consciousness, and that consciousness is made up of energy and information, like Wi-Fi. Okay, Wi-Fi broadcasts through waves of information, and we are like an advanced computer. We put out our own signal of waves and information. That's what we are made up of. Infinite waves coming from source, basically, but we're broadcasting a field of our own thoughts, beliefs, inherited codes, you could call it, you know. And what you want to do is you want to become aware of how you've been coded. Like how have your belief systems and your past experiences, how are they sitting inside of you? And how is that creating a reflection in your life? You know? So, for example, like if you think of yourself like a stained glass window, okay? You have thoughts and beliefs, and you have an image and an identity that comes from everywhere. What you think, what people have taught you to believe about yourself, etc. And your own consciousness is like the sun that shines through it, and it creates like a reflection, right, on the floor. And that reflection, often we get caught up in, and we think, oh, that's us. We're looking at the reflection of our own thoughts and beliefs and perceptions and patterns that have come from what we have believed to be true, what we have encoded inside of ourselves. And when we are not happy with that reflection, we have to remember where it's coming from. So we have to come back inside of ourselves, look at how we've internalized patterns, how we've internalized belief systems, how we've been coded by our pasts, say, for example. So we have to put out our perceptions and our beliefs. We have to use a projective technique to look at where this reflection is coming from, because it's coming from here, inside of you. Okay? So we use constellations to explore the parts of us, aspects of what's going on inside of us. Put it out so that we can see it. Let it breathe, let it move, let it express itself, see what wants to happen in this field. Okay? And then once we've made changes, we re-internalize it. And we actually become kind of recoded, but in a new way, with new thoughts, new perceptions, new beliefs. So I don't know if you guys have heard of epigenetics. Do you know what the field of epigenetics is?
I've heard of it, but I'd love to hear more.
It's the whole quantum physics revolution. Okay, so what happened is that when quantum physics came in, the nature of our reality, the way that we thought about reality changed. Do you want to come a little bit closer? And basically, people found that reality it participates. It's not a fixed, externally objectifying thing. It's a participatory field. So there were 4 aspects to quantum physics that they discovered. And one is non-locality, which means that they found the 2 particles that interacted in a field made an imprint on each other, and then it didn't matter how far away those particles were from each other, they would still impact each other. They would carry the memory wherever they were. There's another way to think about non-locality, and that is that we are everywhere. We're not just here in our physical bodies. We are aware of ourselves as a consciousness here because we kind of identify that we're living inside of our body. But we forget that we're made up of these fields of consciousness. One model that I learned is 7 levels of consciousness that go up to a 0 point. And that 0 point is like a God point. And you are connected in that 0 point energy field to everything and everywhere. Like a God's field or a God source or a source field or whatever you want to call it. So in actual fact, we can access consciousness through our own 0 point energy field anywhere and everywhere, in any time and any space. Okay, so there is no away as such. So that's the idea of non-locality, and it's an important one when you think about family constellations, because if you work with someone who's physically not here, you can still access their consciousness. You can access awareness of them. You can pick up their field. Okay. You see that a lot with remote viewers. People who study remote viewing, they are trained in understanding that we are like another way of looking at it is like we are like an iceberg, you could say. And the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind, and what lies underneath is the subconscious. Okay? And the subconscious mind connects us into the ocean, and that ocean connects us to everything. It's another way of looking at it. So when we drop deeper into our consciousness, you can actually travel in time and space and pick up information. So remote viewers are trained to use their own quantum computer of their own mind. We've got the most advanced quantum computer here. It's made up of all these different parts. And that, plus our own observer, we have something inside of us which is an observer, right? We have a being. Who's looking out? Who's that? Who's looking out of our eyes? It's somebody.
Yourself.
Right?
Yourself.
Yeah. It's yourself, but yourself, you know, it's an identity that's made up of many experiences. And when you unpack some of those experiences, you can actually morph that self. It doesn't have to be a fixed self. It's not a fixed self, right? You're just actually a God point expressing infinity in a way. Anyway, so this is a long story to try and get to epigenetics, but I want to just finish it quickly with the 4 points of quantum physics. So the one is non-locality, the other is the observer effect. And what they found in quantum physics is that when they were looking at this tiny, tiny field, subatomic field, below the atom, smaller than the atom, into the parts of the atom, they would find that particles would collapse from a waveform into a particle as the scientist would be looking for it. Where they looked for it, so it would collapse into particle form. And when they weren't expecting it, it would be a waveform. So in other words, our observation of something and our thought and our expectation and our focus actually collapsed reality from wave into particle. So what did they make of that? That we are actually participating in creating the way that our reality is unfolding for us, depending on the thoughts that we have and the expectations and our perceptions and the way that we're looking at life. We actually are, you know, if we really insist on something going a certain way, then life will move in that way for us. We put a lot of energy in that direction. So that's the observer effect, and then there's what's called entanglement. Entanglement means that we are all kind of entangled in each other's field. We are picking up each other's codes of information. We're feeding each other information all the time. And so we make an impression on each other. We print each other, we print onto each other. So once we spend a day like this together, we kind of entangle in a good way. We take that information away with us, and it doesn't matter where we are forever changed by our interactions with each other. And then the last one is, I think, dual nature of light. I think that's the last one. So light is both a wave and a particle. Okay, so nothing's really, really, really fixed. We just think it's very fixed. And we often explore ourselves like a fixed object. But we really are much more than that. Okay, so things can actually be reorganized. Reality can be reorganized. That's why it's very important that you work with intention in your life. You know? Because life will reform and reflect those pictures and those images, what it is that you're intending and working with. Anyway, so epigenetics is, there was a guy called Bruce Lipton who did some research on epigenetics, because people thought for a long time that their genes were fixed. So in other words, if your parents had X, Y, and Z propensities, then you would automatically have it. And people would often say, oh, it's in my genes. You know, this one's got diabetes, so I must have it. I'll have it. What they found is that that's not true. It's just that if you pick up patternings from your parents, behaviors, and deeply held belief systems, then you'll hold their codes and you'll recode yourself in their image. But if you change those deeply held belief systems and you uncover what it is that you're perceiving and holding as reality and truth, then you can express your genetics totally differently. You don't have to have the same expression of the genes as your parents. So that's what epigenetics is. Its perception is the key, basically, to working with yourself. And that's what we do now. We try and give space to air out the system, air out perceptions. And maybe we think, oh, I've got this thing inside of me, I must be so terrible, I'm so bad. Well, that's just a perception. And if we've internalized this sense of badness, then we'll carry a polarized field. Okay? Then you can't move on and move freely. So that's a little bit of an intro into family constellations. So what we do, are there any questions? It's a bit of the science. Any questions? So Rupert Sheldrake is also the scientist behind this idea, he calls it the morphogenetic field. Okay, so there's this field, this coded field around which form appears, you could call it. So in other words, he would say that first there's the energy and the codes, and then there's the form. So how does a baby know how to grow? How does every cell know how to differentiate into a body? There's a field with information in it around which this body forms. Okay, so first energy with consciousness and then form. Consciousness is primary and form is